Welcome to solverfy.
This is the first problem in the chapter that gives you outliers that you have to deal with when making your frequency distribution. I'll go over the differences with outliers as we get to them, but for now we will start off by finding the minimum and maximum to get the range. Here we have a minimum of 3, and the maximum I'll actually exclude the outliers. If there are outliers for the minimum, we would exclude those as well. So the maximum, instead of 3459, is only going to be 1300 because everything above 1300 is too big of an outlier. I'll show you what happens if you were to use 3462 as your maximum, and you can compare the difference. Now we can subtract and find our range, which is 1300 minus 3, which equals 1297. And this time we'll be dividing into 9 equal classes. And that is equal to about 144.1. Normally, we will want to round up to the nearest hundred since our data goes into the thousands. In general, you'll want to round to 1 decimal place lower than your highest decimal place. So again, since our highest is in the thousands, we would want to round to the hundreds. However, if we were to round to 200, we would go well past 1300. So instead, I will round to 150. Really, you want to just find a number that fits your data comfortably when you round, but without leaving anything out. Now that we have a good width to use, we can go ahead and set up our classes. You could start with 0. I'm going to go ahead and start with 1. Those are really your only 2 good starting places. And then to find our next class, we're going to add 150 to our first starting point, or since we know that it just goes from 1 to 150, we could just know that 151 comes next. But I'll go ahead and start adding 150 to each number to find our next starting point. And we'll have to do this for 9 separate classes. $751, $901, $1,051, and $1,201. Now we can add 150 on the right side, or we can just compare what the number before the next starting point would be. And now once we get to this final class, you'll notice that when we go up to 1350, which is where it would normally end, that's not actually going to be enough to include our outliers, and we do still want to include those outliers. So the way we handle that is we will make this into an open-ended class. This is the main use for your open-ended classes, is to deal with outliers, because otherwise your data could really go on forever. So this final one is open-ended, so we'll just say 1201 plus, or you could write out 1201 and above. Now we can count up our frequencies and we'll get 13, 14, 9, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, and 3. Now I believe whether you would have started with 0 or 1 for your initial starting point, you should still end up with these same frequencies. Now I'll go ahead and make a little chart off to the side here to show you what it would have looked like if you had used the other maximum. So your max would have been 3462. That would have made your range 3459. And it would have made your width equal to 400. So over here, your chart would look like 0 to 399, 400 to 799, 800 to 1199. I'm not going to write all of these out, just the ones that are important. 1200 to 1599. I'll skip this next one. This one would be 2000 to 2399. And I'll skip these two, and our last one would be 3200 to 3599. Now this does not work out very well because our frequencies end up being very uninformative. We have almost all of our data in this very first class. We have a little bit more in the next class, and after that, they're just sprinkled throughout. So this chart over here does not tell us much about the shape of our data, which is why these outliers can really mess up your chart. So you do not want to have a chart like this. Make sure your chart looks like mine. It could start at 0 or 1, but either way, your frequency should still be the same.